Hello my friends, and welcome to another tutorial video for Oxygen Not Included. Let's face it, this game is hard to learn. Food won't grow no matter how much you yell at it. Somebody's peeing in the clean water again. Duplicants casually slide down fire poles into an open pit of magma. There's no end to the problems that you might encounter. When I was learning how to play this game, I ruined my colony about 15 times before I ever finished a run. I may enjoy the pain, and that's something I need to reconcile for myself, but if you want to prevent it, here are my top 10 tips for new players. Number 1, don't print too many duplicates. This is both the most common way new players lose a run, and it's also the least obvious problem to a new player. When I was learning how to play, every time this white flashy thing told me to get new duplicates from it, I'd take one. I'd always think, you know, if I take on more dupes, then that means I have more workers in my colony and it's going to run better than ever. But sadly, I was fooled. My biggest recommendation for any new player is to not print more duplicates unless you have food to feed them and enough oxygen to oxygenate them. Every duplicate you bring into your colony represents an increased tax on your food and on your oxygen, as well as everything else that those systems might depend on, such as power, water, cooling, and so on. I typically finish a run with 15 duplicates, and the colony's imperatives only require 12. Bottom line, don't feel obligated to take more duplicates, and only take new ones if you can afford it. Number 2, manage your resources. I'm hoping by now you're having some sort of internal monologue, like, yeah, you think in a game about resource management that I should manage my resources? But as a new player, it's very easy for this game to divide your attention, and it's easy to lose sight of which resources are vital for survival, and which ones are there just to get in your way. At the end of the day, if you never run out of vital resources, then your colony will live forever. Likewise, if you run out of those resources, your colony will be dead and you will be sad. Unless you're into that sort of thing. Whenever you make a new building, or grow food, or produce oxygen, or do anything vital to running your colony, make sure you realize which resources are being consumed, and make sure you don't run out of those important resources. As a simple example, if I'm running an oxygen diffuser to make oxygen for my colony, and I run out of algae, then I have no oxygen. Duplicants do not like this. By later stages of the game, all of the resources you rely on should be renewable. A renewable resource is considered something that spawns for free, such as water, natural gas, and some other things. A resource is also considered renewable if you can generate it from other renewable resources, such as getting oil from an oil well by spending renewable water to get it. If you're consistently spending resources, find a way to produce them renewably, or make sure to find another solution that is renewable before it becomes a problem. Number 3. Don't waste food. Creating food for your dupes is one of the most expensive things in the game, and overproducing it is one of the more common things that kills a colony for a newer player. It might be a little surprising to hear that producing too much food can be deadly, but early game water and dirt in particular can be very limited, and oftentimes these are the only resources you have to grow food at all. Newer players also have a hard time generating these resources renewably, so it's common to burn through those resources faster than you should have, and lose the game because you can't grow food. Even though it might seem like a waste of power, a single refrigerator can be the tool needed to both assure you don't run out of food, but also to be sure that you're not overproducing it. If your refrigerator is ever full, start to reduce the amount of food you're growing. If the refrigerator starts to run low, or your calorie counts are looking a little sad, grow more. I can't stress enough that this will save you so much time and resources in the long run that it may be the difference between winning or losing a run. Number 4. Use a variety of power sources. Early game power is very simple. If I create a hamster wheel, a manual generator, a dupe can run on it to generate power. However, as soon as you get major power consumers, you will need a lot of different types of power generators, or your colony may suffer a slow and agonizing death. Around the mid-game, try to capture and use every power source on the map, and make sure you have plenty of power before you start running very power-intensive buildings, such as aquatuners, polymer presses, and transit tubes. By the end of a run, generating power from 5 or 6 different types is pretty common, namely coal, natural gas, petroleum, steam, and solar. Losing power could cause your base to overheat, water may stop flowing, oxygen may not be produced, and your coffee machine may not work. All of those could lead to a horrible death. Number 5. Manage temperature exchange. Gases, liquids, and solids are constantly exchanging their temperatures, and it's vital that you understand how this works as the game progresses. Bad temperature will cause obvious things to happen, like your duplicants dying or eggs getting cooked. Bad temperatures will also cause your food to not grow, it may cause critters to die, and it may cause buildings to break. The best way to control temperature exchange is to build certain kinds of pipes or tiles out of certain materials. For example, if I click a tile and I click the Properties tab, check out these two numbers. Heat capacity is how much heat can be stored in this thing, and thermal conductivity denotes how quickly heat is transferred to the other things around it. Building your pipes or tiles out of certain materials will assure that you can either contain heat effectively or encourage heat transfer depending on what you want to do. Also, the type of tile or pipe you use will determine a lot of its heat-related stats. A lot of buildings can also be made out of different materials, and some materials will modify that building's overheat temperature. For example, lead is the worst at resisting heat and will overheat pretty easily, while things like steel are the best materials for resisting heat. When working with really hot substances like this natural gas, you'll need machinery that can resist the heat, but the materials that can handle the heat may be a little bit expensive or hard to get in the early game. It's also useful to check the acceptable heat ranges for plants and critters and make sure they're in comfortable temperature ranges to assure your food continues to grow and to assure those hideous critters don't die, unless you want them to. You can also check at what temperature materials will melt, freeze, or turn into gas, which can be important in some situations. Sooner or later, you'll need to create some kind of cooling system and circulate either cold gas or cold liquid to certain points of your base to prevent them from overheating. Remember that circulating cold liquid will always be more effective than circulating cold gas, so thinking about how you're going to generate cold liquid is very important. Continuing on the temperature-based tips. Number 6. Extreme heat equals energy. It can be really annoying or scary to deal with things that are obscenely hot, but if they are hot enough, you can use it to your advantage and generate a lot of energy from that excess heat. One of the most powerful buildings in the game is the steam turbine. This converts hot steam into energy and then outputs hot water from the steam that it sucks up. This makes it a double-use building, both for cooling and for energy, and it's pretty important to learn how to use it by the time you're entering the mid and late game. If you found something on the map that consistently produces hot steam, or something that produces enough heat to turn water into steam, then you have a free energy source. You can also deliberately build buildings that produce a crazy amount of heat in a room full of water, and keep it from overheating your base by turning that water into steam, and then allowing the steam turbine to cool it. Just remember that extreme heat equals energy. And also, remember that there's a specific building called a sauna, and it's better than these steam rooms, cause, you know, they don't kill your dupes. Number 7. Constantly explore the map. While I understand that building into other biomes can feel a little intimidating, as long as you have a way to either deal with the new gases or new temperatures your base will be exposed to, you should be totally fine. Exploring the map is going to give you access to all kinds of useful and very powerful things, like geysers, vents, volcanoes, and more rare resources. Plus, how else are you going to find those useless buildings that you can't deconstruct? Those are the best, huh? Worst case scenario, if you're worried about exploring into other biomes, you can always line the edges of your base with insulated tiles. And this can be especially helpful on maps where everything except the starting biome is very hot or very cold. If the more advanced biomes on the map are too inhospitable, you can always rush Atmosuit so your dupes can safely explore. Number 8. Stay focused on important tasks. I know this might sound silly, but I catch myself wanting to do things for the sake of neatness and organization all the time, when in reality, they don't actually help me. For example, I'll want to shape my starting water pools to conform to my base layout, or I'll want to sweep debris up as soon as I mine it. Especially for newer players and on more difficult maps, actions like these are simply a waste of time and sometimes a waste of resources. I know, nobody wants to see Mima's waste sitting in a bottle. But is emptying that more important than growing food? Is it more important than breathing? I mean, now that you mentioned it, nah, I guess it's not. Another problem is when too many tasks are queued up at the same time. It can be really easy to get impatient in this game and queue every single project up at once, but that ultimately results in these projects getting done very slowly. Focus your attention on one or two important projects at a time, and make sure you are prioritizing the projects based upon how important they are to your colony's survival. Number 9. Minimize your duplicants' movement time. This may seem pretty obvious, but take some time to think about how your dupes move around your base. Ideally, you want a dupe's travel time to be as short as possible, and this includes their travel between everyday activities like sleeping, eating, using the bathroom, and working. Working in particular will be the cause of most of your dupe's movement. A task like filling up a hatch feeder can take your dupes a lot of time, because they'll often be carrying small amounts of materials from the outer edges of the map back to the center of your base. Supplying tasks especially can be shortened if you build efficiently, and a lot of them can be entirely eliminated by using the tools in the shipping tab. To monitor the amount of times your dupes spend moving, you can look at this report to see how much time your dupes are spending doing different things. You want the time your dupes spend moving to be as low as possible, although as your base grows in the later stages of the game, a lot of dupe movement is kind of inevitable. Minimizing movement time has a lot of far-reaching effects, and if your dupes are moving unnecessarily, it can be a factor to losing a run due to not being able to expand quickly enough, or not being able to efficiently maintain your colony's existing systems. Although the easiest way to minimize dupe movement is to treat them like a waste factory. Lock them in a corner and drop food in occasionally. Ha ha ha! And finally, my last tip for new players. Number 10, keep things simple. I'm not trying to throw shade with this at all, but I feel like a lot of advice that new players get about this game involves very complicated setups that are ultimately more for entertainment than they are for practicality. For example, you can use magma to boil crude oil and turn it into petroleum, and it's not debatable that there are benefits to using your oil this way. The same goes for an electrolyzer setup that's self-powered or a bathroom water loop that's self-contained. They might have their uses, and it's honestly pretty cool that you can do stuff like this, but setting them up incorrectly or spending more time and resources on a solution that you don't really need can be a problem. These types of solutions ultimately aren't required for you to be successful, and especially for a new player, they can serve as a distraction more than anything. You can comfortably win the game on any map without needing fine-tuned builds like this, so rather than starting with the ultra-complex solutions, I recommend trying to solve each problem with the most simple solution you can think of. Once you're comfortable with simple solutions, find ways to add complexity when you think it's necessary, or plan out a new setup for your next run. An example of a simple solution to a common problem is needing cool water to feed bristle blossoms. This is an example of an advanced setup to solve this problem, but it's not very accessible in the early parts of a run, and it can be hard for a newer player to pick up the required nuance in this kind of setup. Instead, we can solve this exact same problem by putting some ice into warm water. After all, that's how you cool down water in real life, right? The ice heats up and eventually melts, leaving you with cool water. There, problem solved. If I want to use a more complicated setup later in the game, I can either add complexity to my current solution, or I can just use a different one entirely once I have the knowledge, the materials, the power, and the research required for it. As long as your colony functions, and as long as your solutions aren't so simple that they'll eventually fall apart, keep things simple. And that's it, guys. Thanks for watching my top 10 tips for new players. If you have any questions or suggestions about these tips, please drop them down in the comments. Also, if you're looking for more Oxygen Not Included tutorials, check out my channel and let me know what you would like to see there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.